Well, we're at the end of chapter 11, and this is probably, in my opinion, one of the most vital sections of this chapter for going forward for y'all, the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system, which is abbreviated ANS, it's a part of the peripheral nervous system. It is the one that is the automatic pilot, is what I described it as. Right, it is underneath your conscious effort, so it functions without your conscious effort. It is going to control visceral activities, or the activities of the different organs, which is, smooth muscle of the stomach, and even the arterioles, and whatever, the cardiac muscles and glands. This is a huge thing of homeostasis. Again, it's going to help the body respond to stress, which again points back to homeostasis, trying to keep the body stable. And it is what allows us to exercise and do intense physical activities, because it's going to be what releases the glucose storage, the energy storage that we'll have. All right, so the general characteristics of the autonomic nervous system is it's going to have both sensory and motor components to it, or sensory is afferent, motor is efferent. And so there's going to be two divisions of this. And this is really important, sympathetic division versus parasympathetic. And we're going to talk about why it is called para. Para means around, and you'll kind of see what it is. The sympathetic nervous system, you might have heard of it as the fight or flight nervous system. This is going to decrease the digestive system, and it's going to increase cardiovascular system, increase heart rate, increase breathing rate. It's going to push blood out to the skeletal muscles, which is going to give us strength. It's going to cause our eyes to dilate, or to get more light in so that we can see better. It is going to make sure that we are prepared for anything that comes our way. And the other thing it does is it's going to release our storehouses of energy, so that we'll have energy to either fight or run away. Now, the parasympathetic is generally called the rest and digest nervous system. Its thing that it speeds up is the digestive system. It's stimulatory to the digestive system, and it is inhibitory to every other one. So these two are antagonistic to each other. They kind of, it's the yin and the yang. Now, the parasympathetic is what is controlling our body under normal, as it says, resting, non-stressful conditions. So, as you're going through your normal day, this is what's going on. You're driving down the road, boom, you pass a police officer, you get that sinking feeling, am I speeding? If you're on Farrell Parkway, which I can hardly wait to be able to drive back to school, but anyway, you get that sinking feeling, you get the hands at 10 and 2, turn the radio down, and you're like, that feel that you get, the drop in your stomach, that is the sympathetic nervous system switching over. And most organs, as it says here, are going to receive input from both of these. And in whatever the sympathetic division is stimulatory for, the parasympathetic is going to be inhibitory for, and vice versa. So now we're going to look at the layout of this, and there's this picture is comparing the somatic motor pathway versus the autonomic motor pathway. And so on this side over here, this is the somatic pathway. And this is somatic means consciously controlled. This is going out to my muscles or glands, but muscles mainly. I'm going to have one motor neuron, cell bodies in the central nervous system. It's going to go pretty much all the way down to whatever muscle it's going to, and it's going to stimulate it. So there's only one here. Now, on the autonomic, there are two neurons. It is a relay. And you're going to have, so I've got a cell body here inside the central nervous system. It is sending signals out. It's going to go somewhere and it's going to synapse. And then that synapse is going to there's another fiber that's going to get that signal, and it's going to end up being the one that goes out to whatever organ it is. So I've got two. I've got the preganglionic fiber, and then I've got a postganglionic fiber. And we're going to see that the two different systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, have a different arrangement of these two. Now, we've talked about this before when we were looking at just the general characteristics in the last chapter. Wherever the ganglion is, this is where synapses are. So back then we called number one the presynaptic neuron, and number two the postsynaptic neuron. But in here we call it the pre and postganglionic neuron. All right, so in the sympathetic division, again, the fight or flight, the when we're scared, this is going to have, they probably should have had this broken down a little bit differently than this, but anyway, I'm going to have, this is the anterior root. Remember, anterior root's where the motor impulse is leaving. It is going to synapse very quickly. On either side of the vertebrae, there is going to be a chain, a little elevator shaft, basically, of all these ganglions. And it's called the sympathetic chain ganglion, sometimes referred to as the paravertebral ganglion. It's right next to it. All it's doing is, it is getting in position so that when this signal goes out, this spreads it like an Amber Alert along multiple different layers. Now, this is what I want to talk about with this, because I think that this does a pretty bad job, and we're going to mention this in a little bit. So, sympathetic nervous system, I'm going to have this little dot here represents the cell body that is inside the central nervous system. So it's going to leave, and it's going to synapse, and I'm going to have the postsynaptic neuron, and let's say this goes all the way out to my heart. All right, and we all know the heart looks like that, right? Now this one is the sympathetic, and again, I can't spell it all out, so this one on the bottom I'm going to draw is the parasympathetic. See, the parasympathetic also got the cell body inside the central nervous system, and it's going to have a really long preganglionic fiber and a very short postganglionic. All right. The sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight or stressful, has a short preganglionic fiber and a long postganglionic fiber. And this is why, see, if I'm scared, and I'll draw it on, I'm going to go back up here to our little picture here. I'm going to get on this side. And so what's going to happen is, if I'm sending this signal out, it's going to synapse here. Now, it's going to synapse on multiple different neurons. One neuron's going to take it up, and it's going to synapse at each layer. This next one's going to come through, and it's going to have collaterals that are going off at all the different layers here. And then I'm going to have another one that's going to go back at that same layer and go out. And it's an Amber Alert. It's like that text that goes to everybody. And here's the way I used to think of it when I was in school, and this kind of helped me. If I had something going on, and let's say you're sitting here listening to me go over this, and you're watching it on your computer, and all of a sudden your computer bursts into flames and everything in the room catches on flames, you're going to run out screaming fire. Now let's say you watch this video and everything goes well, and I don't know if you enjoyed it, you didn't hate it, it's just normal. You're going to go, and let's say you have to go to the store to get something. You're going to go to the store, you're going to get it, your normal stuff, you're going to pick it up and come back. You're not going to stop people on the road and go, man, I had this great lecture on the sympathetic nervous system, right? The sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, wants to get that message out in a hurry. And it wants to get that message out to multiple different neurons. Some of them are going to go, this is supposed to be the lungs, and it probably won't look like the lungs. They're going to have some of them that are going to go and they're going to go to the liver to get things released there. And I'm going to have some that are going to go, and they're going to go to the stomach. And so you're going to have all of these different spreading out tentacles because of this short preganglionic fiber. As soon as it leaves the room, it's screaming fire. Something's going on. So where the parasympathetic, which is just a normal day at the office, I'm going to send a signal out to tell my heart to beat, and it's just going to go out, and just get right up to it, and then go, hey, beat. And then this postganglionic neuron is just going to be right there. So that's the difference. Sympathetic nervous system has a short preganglionic fiber and a long postganglionic fiber because it wants to synapse in this chain ganglion right here so it can spread the message out. The parasympathetic, because it's not worried about telling anything else except whatever organ it's going to have a long preganglionic till it gets right there and then drops off its information on the postganglionic fiber, which is almost exactly on the organ itself. Now, there are some that are going to go through and have a longer part that we're going to have what are called collateral ganglions. This is going to be a lot of things in the abdomen because of the fact that we're going to learn that the sympathetic comes from the area that's the thoracic area. So some things are going to extend down. But again, in general, it's still going to have a short preganglionic neuron with a long postganglionic neuron. So preganglionic fibers are going to, be the ones that are generally short. They pass through. I'm not worried about this. I'm not going to have enough time to really dig into this. They are generally going to synapse in the paravertebral ganglion, right? The chain ganglion. Postganglionic fibers are going to go to the visceral organs. We're going to look at a lot of these things. There is one exception here, and you'll talk a little bit more about this when you get into 211 and get into the endocrine system, because we have certain ones of the sympathetic nervous system that will actually go through, and they will go to the adrenal medulla, the inside of the adrenal gland, and it causes the hormone epinephrine, norepinephrine, to be secreted. Now remember, sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. This should always make you think, or at least if you hear the word adrenaline should make you think sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. When you're scared, your body releases adrenaline. And I did go over this before. Epi means above. Nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. This is Greek for above the kidneys. Adrenaline, ad in Latin means above. Nephron means kidney. And so adrenaline is Latin for above the kidney. Epinephrine is Greek for above the kidney. When years ago somebody patented or trademarked the name adrenaline, so no books any longer can use the name adrenaline without paying a copyright. And so we have to use this epinephrine. And unfortunately, it stinks in the fact that if I was able to use adrenaline, most people would really understand, because I could go to grade school and people would know what adrenaline is. Unfortunately, I can talk to college students who are knowledgeable about the body, and I talk about epinephrine, and they have to remind themselves what it is. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. Anytime you hear the word epinephrine, automatically think adrenaline. So this is what I was talking about with the sympathetic nervous system. This comes out in the thoracic area. We'll look at this a little bit more. This little part here is the sympathetic chain ganglion, or the sympathetic trunks, where it's going to kind of synapse and spread things out. Now the parasympathetic, they call it the craniosacral division, which means it's going to start I'm going to have a part that's in the brainstem or the cranium, and then part that's in the sacrum. And so we'll see how that goes. But the preganglionic neurons originate in either the brainstem or the sacral level. They extend out on cranial or sacral nerves. to ganglia that are going to be near the visceral organs, their target organs. It's got they have a short postganglionic fiber, which is exactly what we were just talking about. Now, I'm not worried about these oculomotor, facial, or glossopharyngeal, but this is what you really need to know. The vagus nerve is the majority of the parasympathetic nervous system. So pretty much everything below your chin is going to be controlled by the vagus nerve. So this is that picture for it. So I'm going to show you in just a second. The one we just looked at with the sympathetic was all in through here. So the parasympathetic is up here and down here. That is why it is called the parasympathetic. It is around the sympathetic nervous system. And so you'll see how these go out. This is a preganglionic fiber, goes all the way out to the heart. It's synapses. I'm not going to enlarge it, but you can maybe even see that purple right there, or better yet on the lungs, you can see this is the postganglionic fiber. It's right there. One of the things I will point out here that I always find interesting, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to test you on it here. You'll kind of look at it a little bit in the urinary system. The kidney has no direct parasympathetic control. It is going to have some of the sympathetic, but there's no direct parasympathetic control. The kidney actually self-regulates, which is pretty interesting. So I put these two pictures side by side to kind of show it, but actually this next slide I think shows it even better. I cut it off. Don't try to read anything on this side because it's a mirror image, but I cut the picture in half to kind of put them together so that you can see this is why this is called the parasympathetic nervous system, because it is going to be around this middle part, which is the sympathetic. Now this might be one of the most important things to kind of get down, and hopefully I really love teaching this in person, so I want to kind of get an idea who's following this, but this is super important, right? And it's not hard. I mean, we got these weird names, cholinergic and adrenergic. Look, this is all about the neurotransmitter, and right now there's only two we're looking at, acetylcholine and norepinephrine. And I just told you that norepinephrine is also called adrenaline. If you can remember adrenaline here, that's going to help you when you get to these names, because look, acetylcholine, if it is a neuron that secretes acetylcholine, it is called cholinergic. Acetylcholine, cholinergic neuron. It's acetylcholine it releases. Adrenergic, this is adrenaline. Adrenergic neurons release adrenaline, but unfortunately in this book we have to call it epinephrine and norepinephrine. So these are the majority of the sympathetic fibers. Now, we're going to look at how this works in just a second. Actually, I'm going to look at it here. This is talking about the effectors. So let's say, it's the heart that's here, right? So if this is the parasympathetic neuron, it's going to go all the way out and it's going to release acetylcholine. The first one releases acetylcholine, and then the second one releases acetylcholine. So both of the neurons in the parasympathetic nervous system are cholinergic neurons. Now, we all know that the sympathetic nervous system is going to be associated with adrenaline, right? I mean, that's just a basic fact. So here's the issue with that. So let's go back to the heart here. Now, I have this preganglionic fiber, and it's going to synapse. Well, what do you know? It synapses and uses acetylcholine. So the preganglionic fiber is also cholinergic. So I've just looked at three of the four neurons in both systems. There's two in each one. So it is the postganglionic fiber in the sympathetic nervous system that releases norepinephrine, or said another way, adrenaline. And this should make sense because since this is the target organ, right, the heart, if I want to make a difference in what the heart does, it's the neurotransmitter at the receptors of the heart that is going to determine what the heart does. So acetylcholine binds to it and it keeps the heart nice and easy. Boom, 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 boom. Norepinephrine comes and binds to it and it's going to cause the heart to beat fast and rapid. All right? So cholinergic neurons release acetylcholine. Androgenic neurons release norepinephrine, or said another way, adrenaline. And again, there are four, and I'm just going to make it, I'll draw it again. There are four neurons, two in each system because it's a relay race. Three of the neurons are called cholinergic neurons because they release acetylcholine. Both of the ones in the parasympathetic and the preganglionic in the sympathetic are cholinergic neurons. It is only number 4 here, the postganglionic fiber in the sympathetic nervous system, that is an adrenergic neuron. Now, these two, acetylcholine or the epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, are going to have receptors that are going to bind to it, and they will change how things happen. Now, there are two that bind to acetylcholine, mucinicaric and nicotinic. They are both excitatory. Nicotinic is very fast, where mucinicaric is slow. And again, you don't have to know it, but you probably should be able to figure out the nicotinic is activated by tobacco toxins, as it says. This is the one that I definitely think that you should know because it's going to come up. Adrenergic receptors. There are either alpha or beta. Now, beta receptors are going to be found on the heart, and they respond to norepinephrine by causing the heart to beat fast. So if I have some sort of heart condition and I'm trying to keep my heart at a steady beat, I'll take a medicine called a beta blocker, which blocks up these receptors, and it keeps the heart from feeling the effects of adrenaline. That's what a beta blocker is. So I want you to know that one. So on these autonomic neurotransmitters, after they're released in the synapse, one of two things is going to happen. If it is acetylcholine, just like we talked about in the muscular chapter, it is acetylcholine esterase, or as I like to call it, acetylcholinerase, that is going to decompose very rapidly the acetylcholine that's bound. Norepinephrine is going to be removed, actually, and then taken back to and used again back to the synaptic knob, and it is monoamine oxidase, MAO, that is the carrier that does it. It's like a little taxi that goes and picks it up from its little receptor and brings it back to the synaptic knob. Now, the hypothalamus is a huge part of the autonomic control. It is going to be controlling the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland is going to be sending hormones out to different other glands, causing them to work. So that's why it's called the master gland of the body. And so that's one of the big reasons it will have control. The hypothalamus is also where your thermostat is. We talked about that in one of the earlier chapters. So the autonomic nervous system is an involuntarily controlled nervous system. I'm going to have two main parts, medulla oblongata and the hypothalamus. The medulla oblongata is a complete nervous system reflex area. The hypothalamus is a reflex area that involves the endocrine system. So this is what's going to help control everything. Now, this is also going to involve the limbic system, which again, hopefully as soon as you hear that, you think of, and I'll wait for a second, you should think of emotions. The limbic system is your emotions. Cerebral cortex, that outer layer of gray matter, that's where your thinking process is. That's where your memories and stuff are, which are going to be tied to emotions. And so that helps control the emotional response. But both of those are going to affect our autonomic nervous system. Again, you can switch over your sympathetic nervous system just from thinking about it, getting scared, something happening, and it gets you scared and it switches over. So that is the autonomic nervous system, and that is this chapter. I hope that that this makes sense.